The San Francisco 49ers have a unique wide receiving core. When I say unique, they usually keep it tight, but right. I tell you what, they got 11 players headed into training camp this year. And what will the expectations be for the 49ers wide receivers in 2023? We're going to talk about it right here with a little breezy this and a little breezy that. Stick around.
Breezy this, breezy that. They know I'm gold-blooded. I got the Niners on my back, you know. Breezy this, breezy that. Ain't nobody working like Breezy, and that's a fact.
All right, let's have some fun. Look, what are the expectations for the San Francisco 49ers wide receivers in 2023? And let me just start by saying, look, the 49ers, the core, there are 11 wide receivers. Now, who's going to make that core? What's going to be that number? That's to be determined. Last year, I believe it was 5. This year, will it be 6? And the reason why I'm asking, will it be 6? And don't feel free to comment below as well. The reason why I'm asking, will it be 6, is because they drafted a wide receiver, right? They drafted a wide receiver, Ronnie Bell, out of Michigan in the 7th round. So it's going to be interesting to see how the 49ers do, plan to attack the wide receiver core this year. Now, I have some stats. I have some things I want to talk about here on this particular show. But then I have my 3 expectations for the receivers, all right, that I want to talk about. Now, you guys can also, again, you guys can read about this. It's going to be in the article that's going to be up there on 49erswebzone.com. Give it a little time. It'll be up there before the day is out. I'm sure of it. But I do want to go over some of the facts that I do have. So when I'm looking at the 49ers, and what did they do in 2022? They had a phenomenal season, all right? At least I thought they had a phenomenal season. And I know we had one wide receiver, that got over 1,000 yards. Shout out to Brandon Aiyuk out there, who clipped that 1,000-yard mark. Round of applause to Brandon Aiyuk. Let me go ahead and pull this up because I do want to read this a little bit. And so you guys can understand how they fared. And this is not comparing them to any other wide receiving core in the NFL from any other team. This is specifically focused on the 49ers and what I expect for them to do in 2023. Now, again, we're focusing not on the pass catching core, but the wide receiving core. In 2022, per PFF, the 49ers receiving core, Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, Ray McLeod, and Danny Gray. All right. That was the core. That was the core from last year. All right. All right. Those were the wide receivers that the 49ers choose to use, whether they were dressed, whether they weren't. We saw Danny Gray go up. We saw Danny Gray come down. But those 4 guys pretty much stuck around. All right. So they eclipsed with 2,316 yards. All right. They had 184 receptions. They averaged 12.6 yards per catch. They scored 12 touchdowns. And most interesting, they had 1,156 yards after the catch for 106 first downs and only 2 fumbles and 16 drops. All right. So 16 drops. Now, the drops are relative because you want to know, like, well, damn, well, how many targets did they have? How many receptions did they have? Drops are bad, though, especially when they happen. We're going to look at a couple of things when we get to that. But I just wanted you guys to have a pretty much clear perception on how they played in 2023, and the stats are pretty good. Now, again, I didn't compare them to any other stats throughout the league and things like that, but from a 49er perspective, I thought this was pretty good. You know what I'm saying? And so with the fun fact, here it is: wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk led the team in receiving yards, 1,015 yards, and he had 8 touchdowns. Brandon Aiyuk had the second most receiving touchdowns for the team. Can you guess who had the most? He was a pass catcher, but he wasn't a wide receiver. I'll leave it at that. All right. So if you can comment below who you guys feel like you may think that person is, feel free to put it in the comment section. You'll get a response. All right. And so look, going into 2023, it's going to be tough to like how do you crack or how do you even like I guess the question is how do you crack this wide receiving group? It seems like the 49ers have specifically some guys that they kind of want to stick with. All right. So if you see me looking this way, it's because I got my stats open over here, right? So don't mind me. I'm still paying attention to you. I know this is bad camera ops. I probably should have it pulled up or whatever or whatnot, but I'm working on a couple of different computers out there. All right. So when I'm looking at the wide receiving grades and I'm saying to myself versus PFL, what did these guys do? How did they perform? How did they catch when it came to contested catches and things like that? And so, what am I expecting in 2023 from the 49ers wide receivers? And the first thing I want to talk about is the drops. All right. Now, I'm expecting the San Francisco 49ers wide receivers to limit their drops. And again, in 2022, the team had 22 drops, but the receivers from these pass catchers, running backs, tight ends, things like that, had 16. All right. Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel led the 49ers with 2 drops. I mean, with 5 drops apiece. All right. So they tied for first with the most amount of drops from wide receiver position. All right. So they led the team. They both had 5. But listen, guys got to limit these drops because it seems like the drops happen at the worst opportune time, right? Like the worst, right? This is in the end zone. This is for a touchdown. Sometimes they happen on first downs, on third downs. You're trying to convert third downs. Can't drop the passes. Now, again, it takes a lot into why wide receivers may drop passes. Some guys be looking to go out and run after the catch. Some guys just don't see the ball in their hand. The pass may be too high. The pass may be too low, but it still counts as a drop. They get their hands on it. Pass may be wide out. There's so many things that can factor into a drop pass. We're not going to really talk about that. That's why I said limit the drops. I didn't say eliminate the drops. I said limit the drops, right? So just, crack down on the drops and things like that. Now, the top 2 wideouts were also targeted the most. I told you there was context behind this. They had 199 targets. So between Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk, they had 199 targets. All right. 49ers need to find a way to limit these drops. There were only 16 amongst the 5 wide receivers that they used. So if in the average it was like 4 drops per receiver, but some receivers didn't have any drops. Okay. But it just as a group, they got to figure out a way to limit the drops. Second, yak. Yakety yak must stay intact. Right? I was trying to find a way to make that work and find a way to make it rhyme. Yakety yak must stay intact. Now, Deebo Samuel led the 49ers in yak, period. He was the best guy when it came to yak this past season. I know Deebo didn't have the best receiving season as a wide receiver. He also missed some games, but he had 499 the yak yards. Right? He finished in the total in the 600, so he fixed like 600 and something yards. But the dude had 400 and 99 yards in yak. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about how I don't see how it's going to be it's going to be very difficult for any one of these young wide receivers. The 49ers have some veteran wide receivers that they also signed in free agency, but it's going to be really tough for a guy like Ronnie Bell or Isaiah Winstead, who was the undrafted free agent wide receiver. It's going to be tough for them to try to break and crack and make this roster. Why? Because the receiving core is solid, right? It's solid. It's pretty solid. All right. Some interesting things I want to talk to you. 2022. All right. The 49ers wide receivers, they recorded 1,015 yards. Wow. Wow. They had the same amount of yards I feel like Brandon Aiyuk had in total. I could be wrong. It's all good. Too funny. But here we go. From what I added up after the catch, Deebo Samuel led with 499 yards. All right. Now, interesting thing. The 49ers drafted a wide receiver named Ronnie Bell out of Michigan. Okay. Ronnie Bell was the leading wide receiver at Michigan that year. Now, Michigan was a weird team because they pretty much predicated their offense off running the ball. Sounds familiar. Play action pass. Sounds familiar. And then the wide receivers would kind of eat. And it kind of due to me to the the quarterbacks that they had to use. All right, so they ended up going with the young kid and McCarthy, and he kind of started to get into a rhythm with his pass catchers. All right, so I want to leave it at that. Now, when I'm looking at Ronnie Bell, I'm saying to myself, what? How can he add to this wide receiving core? So here's what's cool. And at Michigan, all right, so he had 690 yards as a wide receiver, which is more yards than Jawan Jennings and Ray McLeod and Danny Gray had combined. I do want to put that out there. More yards than they had combined. But he also had 278 yards of yak, all right, of yak. And I like that. I like it a lot. I love it a lot. 278 yards in yak. So I'm saying to myself, how can this young kid crack the roster? I tell you what, you catch a pass and you move your ass. Catch a pass, move your ass. That's it. That's how he cracks the roster. Because when I'm looking at Ray McLeod, can Ronnie Bell, and to me, that's probably going to be the replacement of a Ray Ray. Why? Ronnie can be a person on special teams. He can be a returner, right? He can also be a wide receiver. He catches contested passes. He could run out of the backfield. And I get it. 4.5 speed guy. It's okay. It's football speed is a little bit different than 40 straight line speed. So Yak is going to be the key. We saw Deebo Samuel was a 4.4 guy, but it looks like he runs 4.3 when he's on the football field. So speed can be deceptive. Yak is the key, I think, to the 49ers offense. It probably always will be. And if you look at the type of players that they add to this roster at the wide receiving position, and they can get you Yak. And don't get it twisted, Brandon Aiyuk, even though he may be the best wide receiver as far as route running and ability to get open and things like that. Listen, dude was second in Yak for the Niners, all right, in the 300s, if I'm not mistaken. So Yak would be my number two, but I do want to show you a play that resembled to me why I feel, you know what I'm saying, like this is why Deebo Samuel gets that nod, yo. This is why he's the man. Now again, this comes in the playoffs. All right, he did this throughout the season because most of his plays were short passes, and then he takes it to the
Deebo
house.
Samuel
To me is one of the greatest players in the NFL that'll catch a pass for 1 yard and find ways to find the end zone. It doesn't matter if he's at the 1 yard line, his 1 yard line, like, the opponent's 1 yard line, trying to get all the way to his. He could take it 99, 98, 97, all the way down. That was 74 yards right there. Deebo Samuel, to me, is the king of yak when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers and whatnot. And so, look, yak has to be like prominent, for these wide receivers. Limit the drops, get that yak. Find a way to be a playmaker is my number three. And so when I think about the 49ers wide receivers, when I think about the actual wide receiving position, it's known as that playmaking position. I know football has changed over the years, but that's what wide receivers do. They make plays. Doesn't matter where you line up. If you're the wideout, if you're lined up in the slot, you have to find a way to make plays. Now, there's a measurement or statistic that I like to base my playmaking ability off of. All right. It's not like Madden where I'm looking for the spectacular catch and things like that, but I am paying attention to catching the ball. And I think that's one of the most important things. And I look at catches that aren't the wide open catches. I'm looking at the contested catches. What is a contested catch? Well, contested catch is when the defender it has a chance at the ball, right? It's right there. Like, can that wide receiver, does he have strong hands? Can he bring that ball down? And I thought it was quite interesting that the 49ers wide receiver that led the team in contested catches was Brandon Aiyuk, right? Not say that he shouldn't, but mostly you're thinking these are going to be those 50-50 balls and things like that. Now, I do have a play where it was kind of a lollipop 50-50 ball. Brandon Aiyuk went and got it, but it was still a contested catch. Watch where the defender is on this play. Brock Purdy knew to throw the lollipop with so much air under it to where only his guy can go get it, But man, if that defender would have turned around, that ball was just hanging in the air, man. That could have been a disaster play. But Brandon Aiyuk went out there and got it. Contested catch. That was kind of one of those 50-50 type of balls. All right. So in 2022, the pass catching group, right, as a total, finished the season with 32 contested catches, but 17 of those contested catches, all right, over half of them came from the wide receiving position. All right. And so when I'm looking at Brandon Ayuk, he led the team in contested catches. He had 9 contested catches. Brandon Ayuk was out there balling. And that wasn't the first, man. I saw a whole bunch, especially against, go back and rewatch the Arizona Cardinals games. Man, those were some tight coverages. There was one in the end zone. I'm like, I don't know what Jimmy was thinking. It was like ping pong, but IU came down with it. Then the other game in Mexico City, I believe Brock Purdy, like the contested catch. I'm just like, yo, Brandon Ayuk knows I gotta go out there and I gotta come down with these balls. Pause. All right. So contested catches, for me is one of the things that I expect these 49ers wide receivers to come down with. I expect them to be the aggressors when it comes to the football. All right. I don't expect the 49er wide receivers to sit there and wait for the ball to come to them. I expect for them to go get the ball. Now I need the ball in their radius for sure. But they need to make sure that they come down with the ball. Because I tell you what, here's what happens. Here's what happens if if you don't catch the contested catch. Here's some of the possibilities, right? Tip passes. And tip passes usually go to the defense because there's usually more defenders around the ball. So for the San Francisco 49ers, man, if you're going to go and get and contest for that catch, for that ball, for that pass, you better make sure you find a way to come down with it. Because if not, it can easily be a pick six going the opposite way. When quarterbacks are throwing into traffic, the wide receivers got to figure out a way. Not every window is going to be wide open. Not every window is going to be wide open. But for some teams, some defenses, especially when they're playing zone, it's the quarterback's job to find the best and the biggest window to throw the ball into. We saw a lot of that in 2022 from the 49er wide receivers. A lot of nice open size windows for those guys to kind of like the quarterbacks to get the ball right in the pocket, and then that's where your yak comes in, right? You catch the ball, then you the yards after the catch. And so look, those to me are my 3 expectations for the San Francisco 49ers. I tell you what, if they limit the drops, they continue to find ways to get yak, and they find ways to make plays on the ball, man, the 49ers wide receiving core, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, they might be the most dynamic wide receiving core in the NFL in 2023. Again, guys, if you want to check out the article, go to www.49erswebzone.com. I truly appreciate you guys. Listen, thanks for watching, man.